Okay, now we are going to be adding integers with the same sign without using counters or graph. When we add integers with the same sign, we add their absolute values. The sum is positive if both integers are positive and negative if both integers are negative. These are rules that if the counters don't make sense for you and the graph don't make sense for you, these are rules that you can follow to get to the right answer. I personally prefer to picture it on a number line in my head. That's how I do it, but whatever works for you. Sometimes people need these rules. Some people picture moving down a number line. Sometimes people picture it like a bank account and they're like, I'm down so much and then I'm up so much. Where am I at? Whatever works for you. So they're the same sign, so we add their absolute values. So I take the absolute value of 7, which is 7, and the absolute value of 4, which is 4, and I add those together. 7 plus 4 is 11, and they are both positive in the original problem. So that means, that means that my answer will be a positive 11. Here I have negative 7 plus negative 4. I'm going to take the absolute value of negative 7, which is 7, the absolute value of negative 4, which is 4, and add those together, and I get 11. And both numbers were originally negative, so my answer is going to be a negative 11. Okay, here I'm adding integers with different signs. So to add integers with different signs, we subtract their absolute values. The sum is positive if both integers' absolute value is greater. I think I said that wrong. It's positive if the positive integer's absolute value is greater, and it's negative if the negative integer's absolute value is greater. So I look at 9 plus negative 4, and which one has the greater absolute value there? It's the positive number. So I know that my answer is going to be positive. So I'm going to go ahead and draw just a plus sign so I remember this is going to be a positive. And I take the absolute value of these numbers, which is 9 and 4, and I am going to subtract their absolute values. So I take 9 minus 4, which is 5. And I already said that my answer was going to be a positive, so I have a positive 5 as my answer. Here I have negative 9 plus negative 4. So which one has the greater absolute value? That's the negative 9. So my answer is going to be a negative 9. Or not negative 9, it's going to be a negative number. So I take the absolute value of these numbers, and I have 9 minus 4, which is again 5, but now it's a negative 5. The way I do this personally is I picture I'm at negative 9 and 4 isn't enough positive to push me over the 0 line and into the positive answers. So that's how I remember that it's going to be a negative number. So whatever works for you. Okay, remember that these questions down here are questions that you can ask yourself if you ever get stumped. Sometimes the hardest part about math is you just look at the problem and it looks so overwhelming and scary you don't even know where to start. So those questions are questions that I'm giving you to help you get started. Sometimes it's easier when the teacher's sitting next to you and you never know why you can't do it when you're alone. That's because those questions are what I'm asking you to help prompt you to get to the right answer. So these are questions that you can think in your head to help yourself get to the right answer. So do both integers have the same sign? They do. That means I'm going to add their absolute values. So I'm going to take negative 26. Absolute value is 26. Absolute value of negative 17 is 17. And I'm going to add those. 26 plus 17 is 43. Now, will the sum be negative or positive? Well, if they're the same sign and they're both negative, my answer is going to be negative. So I have negative 43 as my answer. 5b, I have negative 14 plus negative 16. So do they both have the same sign? They do. That means I'm going to add their absolute values. So I take 14 plus 16, and that gets me 30. And then I look and I say, will the sum be negative or positive? Well, they're both negative, which means my answer will be a negative 30. 6a, I have negative 13 plus 18. So now we have different signs, which means we are going to subtract their absolute values. So the first thing I do is I take their absolute values. Absolute value of negative 13 is 13. Absolute value of 18 is 18. But when they're different signs, I find the difference between the numbers. So I take the one that has the greater absolute value, which is 18, and then I subtract 13 from that, which gives me 5. Which integer has the greater absolute value? It's 18. What is the sign of the integer with the greater value? So 18 was positive, so that tells me that the sum will be a positive 5. 6b, I have negative 6 plus 20. So I take their absolute value of negative 6, which is 6, and absolute value of 20, which is 20, and I say which one has the greater absolute value, and that's 20. So I take 20 minus 6, which gives me 14. And what is the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value? And that is a positive. So the sum of this will be a positive 14.